Last year, my best friend and I decided to experiment with a Ouija board, just to see if it worked. We made our own out of a paper and used a regular drinking glass as a pointer, so we were pretty skeptical. Well, we were in for quite the shock. It took a while for the board to warm up, so to speak. But once it did, it became apparent that we were surrounded by relatives who had passed away long ago. The glass moved extremely slowly, and there was nothing scary being said or done. However, halfway through our session, 2 of our other friends came bursting into the room laughing and joking. Once they had calmed down, we got back to the board. This time, the glass moved extremely fast. We could hardly keep our fingers on. It started spelling out names and words without us even asking questions. The words spelled out included murder and lust. We ended the session immediately as we were pretty freaked out. After that, everything went back to normal for a few days, but then I started waking up at 3 a.m. every night with an unexplainable feeling of dread. This waking up continued for a few weeks, and I started becoming depressed for no reason. Then, one night at about 1 in the morning, my friend was walking me home. As we were walking up the road, he claimed he saw a black figure of a man leaning on a fence staring at us. We laughed and joked about the place being haunted. We did used to hear bells chiming every night on the road. That night I woke up again, but this time I was being pinned face down on my bed by what felt like a man. I tried to struggle, but I couldn't move. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. He started speaking in my ear, but I don't even know what he said. And then he was gone. I hid under my covers, and soon I fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I put it down to a nightmare, though it felt so real. A few days later, we had family visiting. My grandmother, who claims to be very perceptive, came in and said she felt that there was a presence in the house. My mother said she thought so too, and ever since I'd done a Ouija board in my bedroom, she didn't think it was harmful. My grandmother disagreed and said she thought it was pure evil. The next bit is really hard for me to explain, as I don't really know how I felt. As they were arguing, I began to get the same dreadful feeling I had so many other nights, and I began to feel something was wrong. It felt as though I was being pulled into a tunnel further and further away from the room I was in. I tried to tell my mother, but I didn't feel right. But I couldn't make myself talk or move. It felt as though something was trying to control me. I finally managed to make myself talk, but I screamed it. There's something wrong with me. The next thing I knew, my sister was beside me, hugging me, and I was crying and shaking uncontrollably. My family said I had what looked like some kind of seizure. We got a priest later on to bless the house, and while he was doing so, all the pipes in the house made a huge screaming noise, and they didn't stop till he had finished the prayer. After that, everything went back to normal, and I still can't explain what happened to me. It scares me just to think about it. This happened in Mobile, Alabama, back in 2008. One afternoon, some friends and I decided to make a homemade Ouija board. We tried it out a couple times, but nothing really seemed to happen. Well, a few weeks had passed, and a friend who lived with me at the time and I were looking at some photos of us at a club on my computer. We started to talk about how some of the orbs appeared only around us in the pictures. But then we got on the subject of ghosts. She got up from the computer and sat on the couch with my brother. When I got up and walked toward them, my computer screen suddenly shut off and turned right back on. And then the light next to the couch faded and turned a darkish red. Everybody got the chills. Well, we shrugged it off until a few days later, I lost $100 that I had sworn I put in my dresser drawer. My mom and I looked everywhere around the house, including countless times in the drawer, and then out of nowhere, my mom finds the money in the same drawer on top of everything in it. I was starting to think that we attracted a ghost through the Ouija board. My suspicions were correct when one morning my favorite stuffed animal went missing. I thought maybe someone was just playing a prank on me because I knew I put it in my mom's room next to the bed. I looked everywhere and still could not find it, and I even asked my friend who was in the shower if she had moved it, but of course she hadn't. I became so angry. I knew that it had to be because of something paranormal, because these things did not occur until we made that damn Ouija board. I decided to take the Ouija board to the dumpster and just get rid of it for good. And when I walked back inside, my friend was already out of the shower. She even told me that she found her stuffed animal. I asked her, where was it? She just retorted back with, oh, I saw it when I got out of the shower. It was right next to the door in the empty laundry basket. My heart dropped. Nothing strange has really happened since. This happened around 2002 in Potsdam, Germany. I was 11, and this was my first experience. My sister, who was 12 years old at the time, decided to try a Ouija session with the little self-made cards on which letters were drawn, a table, and a glass. She and two classmates were in the living room of our little apartment. My mother had a Ouija experience when she was young and was fine with my curious sister's idea, and she also took me and my little brother to the kitchen to not disturb my sister. We waited for some minutes in there. I stared lazily at the door to the corridor. The door was mostly glass, and I could see everything that was going on behind it. And then I saw a person walk past the kitchen. He could only have come from the living room and seemingly was heading for the exit. I was puzzled. First, the man was pitch black and as tall as an ordinary grown-up. And second, there was no audible sound of the living room door nor the footsteps. He could not have been there, and so I simply brushed it off. I believe my mind was just playing tricks on me. Then my little brother, who sat across from me, asked, "Did you see that shadow too?" I was astonished, and we both shared impressions. Shortly after that, my sister and her friends came into the kitchen and stated that the session just ended because the spirit left. This was the start of paranormal activity around us. Even as we moved on to another house, it still went on. Because of my sister's innocent curiosity in the Ouija board, our home became haunted. It started in most cases when it got dark and our parents went to sleep, so they never witnessed anything and thought we were kind of nuts. It was hard. Lights switched on when my sister and I headed for a dark room. There are many things from shadows to lights going on and off, door knocks, doors flying open, footsteps, and of course cold spots. There was also an extremely nasty smell in one of the bathrooms. It came without warning and quickly left. It was clear that this was no normal smell that you could imagine existing in the bathroom. It was something like fowl had lain in the tub for a long time. Once something pushed on my mattress from beneath while I was lying on it and reading a comic. When we were 16 and 15, it all ended because we started to ignore every unnatural occurrence. We had no nerve or power left to stand any more of this game. Unfortunately, the spirits cooperated and I haven't seen or felt any more paranormal activity. My story took place in Cambridge, Minnesota in 2006 when I was just 12 years old.
Sit back.
I had just started 7th grade, and I had a combination of two types of paranormal things happen. It was a Saturday afternoon and I was bored, so my best friend Becca was over.
Are you ready?
We took out the Ouija board I got last Christmas. I had asked the board, what was I in my past life? I was joking, of course, that thinking these things didn't even really exist. The board started to spell out, Rebecca Lynn Peltzenmiller was there. That's all it said. We tried asking another question. Will I meet anyone else in my past life here? It spelled out yes. Who? We both asked. Vincent Daniel Douglas. 2 years passed and I had met no Vincent Douglas. I just joined the musical Annie, and you guessed it, the guy I acted with was named Danny Douglas. It was very strange. We had never met before, but I felt like we had known each other all of our lives. That was when I remembered the forgotten Ouija board, so I asked him if Danny was his real name. He laughed and said his first name was Vincent, a family name that had been passed down through generations. I was shocked. This incident occurred about 13 years ago when I was 15 in a city near Perth, Western Australia. At the time, several strange things were happening, which I believe had to do with a seance my friend and I had played around with. Nothing much exciting happening during the seance, and to be honest, I thought my friend was pushing the glass and really never thought much of it. Until I began to wake up at 3:15 every morning with just a genuine sensation of total terror. You know that kind of scare you get when you get that jump scare? It's like that, but when you wake up with that. I would lie awake in my bed with the covers over my head as I had a strange sensation of being watched and was afraid of what was in my room with me. I would lie there like that until the sun came up. I was always terrified of looking in a certain direction, and upon inspection I found that the glass which had been used in the seance. This took me by surprise as the glass had been disposed of, so I was certain that the glass was the reason for my sleepless nights. I once again disposed of the glass. However, I kept experiencing the same feelings, and once again upon inspection came across the same glass that I had already thrown in the garbage twice. This time I was determined to get rid of it, so I took it outside and smashed it on the ground. I continued waking at 3:15 to the minute every night without fail, and I started seeing strange dark shadows. The shadows started as perfect black balls which would circle my room, then seemed to disappear through my window. I just put this off as paranoia and lack of sleep and simply try to ignore it and go back to sleep, still with my head under the covers. Other people started noticing the shadow too, and at normal waking hours saying that the end of the house where my room was seemed a bit creepy, and gradually the shadows seemed to get bigger, but I continued to ignore them. That is until one night. The family dog woke me, again at 3:15. He was sitting next to my bed and he was making a crying sound. Now, I figured the dog needed to go out, so I got up and let him outside. But as soon as I was back in bed, the dog was at my window, squeaking and carrying on. So, I got back up and I let him back inside. The dog followed me to my room and once again sat by my bed whimpering. I then took him back outside, and even though he sat at my window still crying, I made him stay out there for a bit because I didn't want him coming back in and waking me up. I eventually gave in and let the dog back inside. The bathroom light was on, letting light flood the hallway as I walked back to my room, where the dog started growling. I moved closer to the bathroom door so the dog could see it was me. As I was worried, he was growling at my shadow. I called him up to me as he was still growling and said, "Hey, it's only me. Come here. What's the matter?" The dog walked slowly toward me, still growling, and then sat next to my leg, growling at something behind me. In a flash, my thoughts raced to, "Oh my God, there is someone in the house," and turned around and started running down the hallway. What I saw was something that has never left my mind and something no one has ever believed when I have told them. I saw what seemed like a huge bird. It had huge outstretched wings that would have touched the roof and almost the floor. Its body ended where the wings did, and neither seemed to touch the ground. As it followed me down the hallway, the wings stayed outstretched and it seemed to glide as it moved. I did notice a small head in between the wings, but no features that I recall, and the head had seemed hooded rather than round and connected to the body without a neck. The creature seemed more shadow-like than of flesh, and as much I have tried to put it down to my own shadow, I am certain that what I experienced and saw was real, and could have in no way been my own shadow. I remember mostly the wings and the enormity of them as they towered over me, and how it moved as it followed after me until it slipped into another room. I'm not sure what happened to it after this, but my sister, who is older and didn't believe in anything paranormal, had some strange experiences involving a black shadow and some kind of sleep paralysis, where she was surrounded by a bunch of people laughing at her as the black shadow circled over top. I've been using the Ouija board for almost 7 years now, and have had very few bad experiences, and none that I would consider evil. I do have one particular entity that I talk to pretty regularly named Wiz. He claims to be my spirit guide. He also claims to be my brother from a previous life, in the 700 Scandinavia. He's not really good with numbers. I haven't been able to get really any winning lottery numbers from him yet, but he is decent at telling me about events yet to come, at least to an extent. Sometimes he would tell me what he thought I wanted to hear, but there is the occasional nugget he does give me. Before May of 2008, my wife had never used a Ouija board in a serious attempt to contact the other side, but after convincing her that it was safe, in May 2008 in Columbia, South Carolina, she and I managed to make contact with Wiz. Wiz and I were old friends by then, and although she had heard me talk about him, she had never talked to him herself. Wiz told us that she would get pregnant and be due in June of '09. By October, I had nearly forgotten all he said, my notes tucked away along with notes for the novels that I'm working on. We found out at the end of October that she's pregnant, and at the time of the first doctor's appointment, she was due July 1st. During the second doctor's visit, the doctor adjusted the due date to June 23rd, and about a week later, I was going through my novel notes and found the notes from the Ouija conversation. I nearly fell out of my chair. Wiz has given me the whole backstory for my novel, my life in the 700 Scandinavia, and has, I feel, kept watch over me as I work on it. My novel is currently on the HarperCollins online slush pile, but Wiz has told me that HarperCollins will not like it, but it will be picked up by another publisher. Whether or not I'm just reading too much into coincidences, I don't know. Is it my subconscious that has told me these things? I don't know. But if it is, wouldn't that be an amazing thing? And But if it is, wouldn't that be an amazing thing in and of itself?
Sit back.
I live in Marion County, Fairmont, West Virginia.
And listen to this story.
This is also the city where my experience took place. I am now 49 years old, but I was 12 years old when this happened. In 1978, my mother, who is now deceased from breast cancer from back in 2006, bought me a Ouija board, thinking it was a game we could play together. So one evening while Dad was at work, we got out the board, lit a candle, and put it in the middle of the table. We placed our fingers lightly on the glass. Mom asked if there was anyone there that wanted to speak to us. I was giggling, of course, and she asked again, but the glass then moved to a yes. I told my mom she was moving it, and she said she was not. Mom asked, "Who are you?" And the glass then went to each letter and spelled out Jackson. We did not know anyone by the name of Jackson, first or last. Mom then asked, "Are you a good spirit?" And the glass moved to yes, and then no. Mom asked, "How did you die?" And the glass did not move from the middle of the board. I was getting scared at that point, so my mom said, "Since you're not going to tell us, we are going to say goodbye now." The glass slid to no, and Mom said, "We have to go." And then the glass then went to goodbye. We took our fingers off the glass, and it was sitting in the middle of the board. The glass flew off the board, and the round plastic piece where the middle pointer is was cracked. My mother put it all back in the box and put it up in the closet. Where we lived, the floor was close to the ground, and my mom... Where we lived, the floor was close to the ground, and my room was at the end of the house. And that night, there was a growling sound coming up through the floor in the corner of my room. I went and got my mom. She came in and it stopped. My mom smoked cigarettes, and that night her cigarettes smelled like sulfur. She said they tasted like sulfur too. My dad could not smell it or taste it, but I could smell the sulfur strong. 3 nights later, the growling started up in the same corner of my room. I again went and got my mom. My dad was home, and my mom told him to get the flashlight and to go out and look. While the growling was happening, my dad came in and said that nothing was under there. My mom proceeded to yell at it and tell it to stop. It got louder and sounded more like a guttural growl, like it was going to come through the floor after my mom, and it finally stopped that night. The next morning, my mother felt very ill. We took her temp and it was around 102. So my dad took her to the hospital and they admitted her. She was diagnosed as having an infection clear through her whole body, and she was in there for a week. The doctor told my dad that if he'd waited one more day to bring her in, it could have killed her. The whole time she was in the hospital, my room and the whole house was dead quiet. Mom and I truly believe the spirit of Jackson died from having an infection in his blood and was never treated for it and died from it. This is my first and last experience with the Ouija board. My dad threw it away at the dump yard. I warn others now about the dangers of having and using a Ouija board.